Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching the Technique of the Month from Digital Photo Magazine. This month I'm going to show you how to create your very own mini planets using Photoshop elements. Now we've got a start picture on the screen here, and this is ideal. This is a small panoramic image stitched out of several images, but any good landscape will work. The ideal images will have a nice plain foreground and a nice plain sky that doesn't have anything sticking out the top. Okay, so how do we make this into a planet? Well, the first thing we need to do is to change the shape of the picture. We want to squash this so it becomes a perfect square. Now to make it square, we're going to go to Image, choose Resize and Image Size. Now, before you go any further, you need to change one of the settings down here. Constrain proportions. Now, by default, that's ticked, and that's normal. That's exactly how we would want it. But today, we want to untick it, because we don't want to constrain the proportions. We want to change the proportions. So, the width and the height at the moment are up here. I'm going to change the width. I'm going to drop it down to about 4,000 pixels. And the height I'm going to bring up to 4,000 pixels. So you can see what I've done there. I've changed the width and the height to make the image a perfect square. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to rotate this image around so it's upside down. And we're going to do that using Image again. Then we're going to use Rotate and 180 degrees. So now the whole world is turned upside down. Now we're going to apply a filter. And the filter we're going to use is probably the filter that I would class as my least obvious one to use ever. It's under Filter, it's Distort and Polar Coordinates. Now, I don't use this one very often. In fact, this is probably the only technique I can think of using it for. But it's very good at doing one job, and that's turning square images into round ones. But you must have it set to rectangular to polar. That's the only setting that we want to have. And when you click that, you get a little planet. And you can see it works really well. It's really easy and quick. But if you go in close, you can start to see problem areas. We have a distinct join along the edge. This edge here is the left side and the right side of our images, but when they're joined together in this way, they don't line up absolutely perfectly because, of course, they're different parts of the picture. So to disguise that join, we're going to need to do a little bit of work. Let's start down here on the water. Now, to disguise it, I'm going to use the Clone Stamp tool. And I'm going to get a nice small brush. Let's make this one a little bit on the smaller side. There we go. And I'm going to select part of the image and pop it over the edge here. So I'm going to hold the Alt button on the keyboard and click an undamaged part and then paint it over the area where I have the problem. So I'm copying pixels from one part of the picture and putting them over the other. Like so. Now we have to be careful because we can start to get bits of the image repeating and reappearing. So every now and again it's important that you click the Alt button or hold the Alt button and click another area like that and just try painting it in again. So keep moving your source point around, otherwise you run the risk of having repeating patterns coming into your picture. Now, it's not too difficult to do that on water, but it gets a little bit harder as we get into the buildings here, so a little bit more time and care is required. But it's exactly the same technique. We'll hold the Alt button to select an area, and then we'll paint it in, like so. And we'll go down this wall, down the edge of the key, like that. And what we're trying to achieve is just a nice, soft blend. We're not looking for anything that's too realistic, because we're zoomed in quite a long way here, and we're looking at very close detail. But it gets much easier if you have a tree stuck on the either edge of your picture, because trees are really good sources for filling in joins. Because all we need to do now is just select part of the tree from up here, and then we'll just paint in more tree. And you can be as creative as you like here. We'll just put a bit of tree down there, and maybe there was some tree over here. And trees, because they're not a regular shape like bricks, are much easier to put in and have nice irregular shapes all over the place. Okay, that looks pretty good. So there we are, there's our new tree. Now we're back to wall again, so we'll try and be a little bit more careful, but the same technique. I'm just going to try and put in a little soft edge like that. Watch out for any repeating patterns that may occur. Try and avoid those too, so we'll cover that up. And a bit up here. And then we've got the edge of this building and the sky. Now, there's a distinct difference between the colour of the sky on one side and the other. So to cover that area up, I'm going to increase my brush size by quite a bit. Let's go up to, yeah, about 250. That looks good. That should give us a nice soft edge brush, and it should help to disguise the join really easily. Puts a nice smooth change from one side of the sky to the other. I'm just going to run it down the edge of the building as well, just to take the hard edge off that line, like so. There we go. Okay, let's zoom back out again, double click the hand to fit it onto the screen, and you can see that's looking pretty good. The join is pretty much gone there now, but we still have areas of problems, particularly around the four corners. Let's have a look at those. What happens when you apply the polar coordinates filter, it tends to repeat the pixels at the edge and stretch them out, and it gives you this sort of streaky effect. Now, I'm going to try and cover those up, but I'm not going to use the clone tool for this. I'm just going to use a paintbrush. So, let's get a paintbrush. And, well, actually, we need to choose the color. So, in fact, we're going to get the eyedropper tool from here and choose a sort of grey color from the clouds, around about there, right on the edge between the edge of the clouds and the start of that streaky effect. Then I can get my paintbrush and just paint that color in. Now, this is where having a picture that started with a plain sky comes in really handy, because there are no little clouds to worry about or any edges like so. Nice, straightforward, single coloured clouds look great. And we'll go around like that, and around this side, and eventually round to the bottom. Here we go. And there we are. We've now covered up all those streaky areas and put in some nice neutral coloured clouds. Now that's pretty much the whole thing completed, but what I'd like to do is just turn it on its side, because I've got this sort of big wheel down in the bottom right corner, bottom left corner, and I'd like it in the top left corner. So we'll turn it round by going to Image, Rotate, 90 degrees to the right, and that'll just twist your little planet round. Sometimes it's a good idea just to turn your planets round a few times, because they will look better one way up than the other. But I like that. I think that's really good, and there's my little planet completed.